Court. My name's Carol Fennelly. This is a mock trial that is intended to show the difficulties of explaining technical evidence in a trial setting. Many people are used to presenting all this technical data at conferences such as Black Hat or Usenix, and usually your peers understand what you're trying to say. However, in a courtroom setting, that's not the case. You've got people like your typical grandmother who has no clue what you're talking about. So it's a lot harder to explain it. So we're trying to show you what the whole process is about, how the legal and technical sides interact together. Schedule? Schedule? Okay. Oh, cast. Go back, sorry. We have as a judge tonight, actual Chief District Court Judge, Philip M. Pro.
If she'd said old grandfather who knew nothing about what you were talking about, that would have been me. But, yeah.
Okay, and Weasel will be going around and trying to help people move around. He's our goon for the conference. Core Kirk is Caitlin Klein. Our technician's Ryan Bulat. Our prosecutor was going to be Richard Salgado, but Paul Ohm kindly stepped in when Richard couldn't make it. Defense attorney Aaron Keneally. Our defendant, Captain Jack Hack. Could you take a bow here? Simple no, man. Case agent Jesse Kornblum. Our systems administrator, kindly being played by Jack Halloran, is the hapless Oscar J. Simpson. Government witness, stooge Brian Martin. Defense expert Richard Thiem, and defense expert Jonathan Klein. We've got to get out of this room by 7 o'clock, so it's going to be really hard to try to get everything in that we need to get in. So we're trying to keep to a fairly aggressive schedule on our witnesses. That being the case, we're skipping over a lot of things that would normally be part of the legal process, voir direing witnesses, and going through a lot of tedious things that you people just don't want to hear. So we're giving you the Law and Order version. Lots of people hopefully will have questions, want to talk to people afterwards. What we're going to do at about 7 o'clock or a little bit before is move out there because the unions are going to lynch us if we're not out of here at 7 o'clock. So we're all going to congregate out there. You can sit around, talk to us, ask questions as long as we'll stay around and as long as there's drinks out there. So, with no further ado, I'll turn it over to our court clerk, Caitlin Klein, who will call court to order.
All rise. Hacker Court is now in session. The Honorable Philip M. Pro presiding.
All right, thank you, Ms. Clerk. Please have a seat, ladies and gentlemen. Well, this is the time set for trial in the case United States of America versus Marvin Briggs, also known as Captain Jack Hack. The record is a grandfather with a 2-year-old granddaughter. Some might confuse him with Captain Feathersword, and those of you who watch The Wiggles would know who I'm talking about. But that's no more silliness from the judge. Yeah. The record should reflect the presence of the defendant, together with counsel Ms. Erin Keneally. On behalf of Plaintiff United States, we have Assistant United States Attorney Paul Ohm and also Case Agent Jesse Kornblum, who will be present throughout the trial. The defendant before the court is charged in a 3-count indictment. Each of those counts sets forth a separate charge. Count 1 charges damage to a protected computer. Count 2 charges obtaining information from a computer used by a Department of the United States. And count 3 charges obtaining information from a protected computer. At this time, I'm going to call upon counsel to proceed with their opening statements. I remind you, what counsel say in their opening statements to you is not evidence. It's designed to be a descriptive outline that informs you as to what they anticipate the evidence at trial will show. I want to remind you as well that the defendant, Mr. Briggs, is presumed innocent of each of the crimes charged in the 3-count indictment. Mr. Briggs bears no burden of presenting any evidence. He's entitled to the presumption of innocence, and the burden of proof rests on the shoulders of the plaintiff, the prosecution, United States, to establish his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And of course, the purpose of the trial will be to allow the testimony of witnesses to determine whether or not the government can meet that burden. With that, I want to turn it over to Mr. Ohm to present plaintiff's opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good evening, jury, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. May it please the court, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Paul Ohm, and I represent the United States of America. And this case today is a case about two things. It's a case about theft, and it's a case about destruction. What the United States will show you through its witnesses is that that man, Marvin Biggs, stole sensitive government information. And as your witnesses will testify to the jury, information that if in the wrong hands could lead to risk and putting some of our men and women in the armed forces into harm's way. You will also find out that this man, Marvin Biggs, I don't know what to call it, damaged the government server, damaged the government firewall server, the essential entry point from the internet into the network. It's how he perpetrated his other crimes. You will meet Jesse Kornblum. Agent Kornblum, after you're done conferring, please stand up for the jury. Thank you. This man, an experienced agent of the Air Force Office of Special Investigations, will testify to you about how someone accessed that firewall system, how they damaged that firewall system, how they got to the firewall system by exploiting wireless technology. Today will be a case that will focus on wireless technology. It may be a little complex for you members of the general public, as you are, but it's my job to try and make that come to life, and it's our witness's job. He will show you how someone used an exploit through the firewall to steal sensitive crew placement documents from the United States Naval Academy. He will show you how they used wireless networks up and down the Potomac River to further the ill-gotten gains. You will also meet Oscar Simpson. Oscar Simpson, if you'd like to say him. He is the systems administrator in charge of these systems. Oscar Simpson will testify that nobody else in the United States Navy had the authority or access to do what was done. Not him, besides him, aside from him. Sorry about that. You're going to hear a lot about the defendant. You will hear a lot about the defendant. You'll hear that he's an interesting character. He lives on a ship, has some interesting technology on that ship. Get to know him, study him, scrutinize him. And finally, you'll meet a man named Mr. Brian Martin. Brian Martin sailed with the defendant. He knows his capabilities. He knows his code of ethics, and he'll testify to that. Finally, Agent Kornblum is the witness that I really would like you to pay attention to. Agent Kornblum will tell you about the laptop computer that he obtained through a search warrant from the defendant. He will tell you about how the critical stolen sensitive documents were found on that laptop computer. He will tell you about how email messages were sent from that laptop computer to a foreign power soliciting the sale of this information. This will all come in. And based on this information, we will ask you to find the defendant, Marvin Biggs, guilty of damage and theft of information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, counsel. Ms. Keneally, would you like to make defendant's opening at this time?
Thank you, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
May it please the court. Good afternoon, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Gilligan's Island. Sit right back and you will hear a tale. Let's all recall the popular late 60s sitcom that involved a ship stranded in the Pacific, on an uncharted Pacific island, several members, led by a fearless skipper. The case before us today is very similar, very analogous to the late 60s sitcom in two key ways. One is we're dealing with a captain who is looking after the best interests of his crew. And secondly, but more importantly, the government case, not unlike the late 60s sitcom, although mildly entertaining, is nonetheless fiction. The script in this case has defendant Captain Jack Hack, the skipper of an information brokerage, a person who legitimately is going about his business using wireless technology to better his business, to enhance his commercial capabilities and to look after the financial well-being of his crew, his employees. The fiction, however, arises with the claim by the government that Mr. Hack, Captain Hack, intentionally broke into wireless networks, caused damage, and obtained information in an unauthorized manner. The testimony and the evidence presented today will clearly show this fiction. We will see that Captain Hack possessed neither the capabilities nor the intention to commit this crime. We will see that the alleged damages were insufficient to bring a claim. We will hear the evidence and testimony today presented will show the lack of security controls surrounding the wireless network were so insufficient they could have enabled any number of computer users to access the network and enact the damage alleged by the government. And finally, we will also see that there are specific computer users, persons in this case that you will hear from and about, who had the capabilities and the intention to commit this crime. Now, the government bears the burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that Captain Hack did in fact break into these networks and cause said damage. We are confident, however, that the fiction of the government's case will be clearly exposed and that you will find defendant Captain Jack Hack not guilty.
Thank you, Ms. Keneally. Mr. Olm, you may proceed with your first witness.
The United States calls Special Agent Jesse Cornwell.
All right, Agent Cornwell, if you please step up to the witness stand. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Please have a seat and state your full name and
Jesse Dan Kornblum.
go ahead, Mr. Olm.
Thank you, Your Honor. Agent Kornblum, could you please tell the jury what you do for a living?
I'm a computer crime investigator with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations.
And who do you work for?
I work for the United States Air Force.
Okay. Let's get right to the point. What case were you investigating that led us here today?
I was investigating the theft of a sensitive document, specifically a list of the United States Naval Academy midshipmen summer cruise assignments. That document specifies where midshipmen will be assigned for the summer. They all take a 1-month cruise on a U.S. Navy vessel.
Now, could that document have value to anybody?
Absolutely. The document lists the dates and times that U.S. Navy vessels will be coming in and out of port, which is one of the most dangerous and sensitive times for a ship. You may remember the attack against the USS Cole off the coast of Yemen in 2000.
Okay, thank you. Let's return to your background. For how many years have you been a special agent with Air Force OSI?
5 years now.
And what are your areas of expertise?
I'm an expert in computer forensics, computer security, wireless technologies, and internet technologies.
Okay, very well. Can you tell us how you came to be involved in the investigation in late June 2003?
In early June 2003, we did a routine security sweep of the Naval Academy, searching for rogue wireless access points.
And could you please explain to the jury what a rogue wireless access point is?
A rogue wireless access point would be an access point that is simply not authorized by the Naval Academy. It's not supposed to be part of the network.
Okay, and where was this rogue wireless access point?
We found one rogue wireless access point connected into the sailing center.
Okay. And what did you do next in your investigation of this?
Well, first we took a look at the wireless access point itself. It was a D-Link WAP, and unfortunately those have logging capabilities, but logging is turned off by default, so we were not able to recover any logs from the wireless access point itself.
And without any logging, you couldn't tell from the D-Link itself what had happened?
Correct.
You couldn't tell us. Okay. So what did you do next?
Well, then we looked at a logging server. We have one computer which is dedicated to logging. It records events that occur on the network and stores them there. The computer is log 001. And so we took a look at the log files that are stored on that machine.
And what did you find on that log server?
Well, we found several connections from the wireless access point and from our firewall computer to another computer, a document server called doc 001.
Okay, Agent Kornblum, if I could have you look at the exhibit in front of you. Do you recognize this piece of paper?
I do.
And what is this?
This is the logs from the logging server.
And is that exhibit in front of you in the same condition or substantially the same condition as it was when you obtained it from the server?
Yes.
Your Honor, the government would like to move into evidence Government's Exhibit 1 and
Any-
publish it to the jury.
Thank you. Any objection to Exhibit 1? Or Exhibit 1 will be received.
Quick intermission here for a second. That's the only time we're going to go through kind of the rigmarole of bringing in something through authentication. From now on, you're just going to see things zoom up on the screen once we moved into evidence. Okay, back to character. And what was interesting about this log file?
The log file is interesting in that it shows connections coming from initially the wireless access point, IP address 172.18.33.14. They're attempting to use the login of root, which is sort of the God level or super user. They tried for 1,053 times to log in as the root user, and were unsuccessful for 1,053 attempts. On the 1,054th attempt, they did gain root access to the doc001 server.
Okay, do you happen to have any visual aids that can assist us in understanding this?
We do, actually. If we could put up that slide I brought of the network topology.
Your Honor, we'd like to show the jury demonstrative exhibit D1.
All right. Any objection to D1 being used for demonstrative purposes? All right. Go ahead, Ken.
In the topology, you'll notice the WAP001 up there, IP address 172.18.33.14, connecting to doc001 on the right-hand side of the screen, 172.18.33.22. These connections, as I said, were logged on the log001 server on the bottom right of the topology and stored there. If we could go back to the log file, please.
So multiple computers connected from the wireless access point to the document server, is that correct?
Yes.
And on how many dates did this type of connection occur?
The connections occurred on May 21st, 23rd, 24th, 26th, 28th, 29th, 30th, and 31st.
Okay. Thank you, Agent Kornblum. And then what did you investigate next?
Well, next we decided to take a look at the firewall computer. You can see here there were also connections coming from the firewall, connections from 172.18.33.1 down there.
And so that's the address, the IP network address for the firewall itself?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you investigate the firewall?
Well, we started to take a look at the logs stored on the firewall itself.
Okay, and Your Honor, we would like to move into evidence Government's Exhibit 2.
Any objection? No objection. 2 will be received.
This log is from the Gauntlet firewall itself and shows the connections through the firewall. You can see here on, for example, the highlighted portion, if we could go to that. On May 28th, there were connections using the service testgw coming from the, coming from the firewall's external IP address going to doc1 172.18.33.22. Notice that they were connecting to the firewall's external IP address of 62.36.100.188 on port 44666, and then being redirected to the doc1 server on port 22, or which is the standard SSH port.
So if we could unpack that a little bit, what is testgw on that?
TestGW is not a standard internet service. It was something that we were curious about looking through these log files. What is happening, though, is that someone is connecting to the firewall's external interface and then having that connection pass through, or the connection is then redirected to the doc001 server.
And is this ordinary behavior for Gauntlet firewall?
Absolutely not.
Okay. What did you look at next?
Well, then we wanted to see what the testgw service really did, so we took a look at the firewall's configuration file.
Your Honor, government would move into evidence Government's Exhibit 3.
Any objection to 3? No objection. 3 will be received.
The configuration file, the netperm-table file, controls how the firewall operates. And you can see here, if we can zoom in on the highlighted portion, please. The highlighted portion shows the service being bound or listening on the external IP address of the firewall. It listens on port 44666. These connections are then routed or passed through on sort of a proxy, meaning the connections are just passed through without any sort of filtering at all to later on in the file. Again, if we could zoom in on that portion there. Later on in the file, they're passed to the SSH port or port 22 of the doc1 server, IP address 172.18.33.22.
So again, Agent Kornblum, if you could, in layman's terms, perhaps using the network diagram, explain what this testgw thing allows you to do.
Looking at the network topology, we can see that someone has poked a hole in the firewall. That is, someone has poked a hole allowing people to connect from the outside, such as from, say, an ISP in the lower left-hand corner, to connect to the firewall and go directly through without any sort of interference to the doc001 server that sits behind the firewall.
And again, this isn't typical behavior for a firewall.
This is the antithesis of correct firewall behavior.
Now, this second entry in the configuration file, is this consistent with what you saw in the log file on the firewall?
I'm sorry.
No need to apologize. Strike the question. You know, we had 6 hours to prepare. Could something like this happen spontaneously, automatically?
No, absolutely not. Someone had to deliberately put that in there.
Okay. So what did you do next, Agent Kornblum?
Next, we took a look at the firewall log, which showed that there had been 10 separate connections from external IP addresses using this test GW service. We used an internet tool called Whois to look up what internet service provider was responsible for the IP addresses regarding during those connections.
And were you able to identify internet service providers associated with those addresses?
Yes, we were.
And what did you do with that information?
We served legal paperwork, specifically a 2703D order on those internet service providers, and they turned over the subscriber information of the individuals who were using those IP addresses at the times of the unauthorized connections.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense's prior attorney and the government's prior attorney, 2 characters named Richard Salgado and Jennifer Granick, have stipulated to Government's Exhibit 18. We would like to show that to the jury.
All right, pursuant to the stipulation, Exhibit 18 can be received. You can display it.
Okay, and if you turn to the second page of the stipulation, rather than read the entire thing to the jury, Agent Kornblum, what is page 2 of the stipulation? What does that show?
Page 2 of the stipulation shows that the IP addresses in question in the firewall log go back to specific addresses in the Virginia and Maryland areas.
And so at this point, you thought that the people, in your investigation, you thought the people on this list may be the ones involved in the criminal activity.
It was the best investigative lead, yes.
So what did you do to investigate this?
We obtained and served search warrants on all 10 individuals involved in this case,
Okay, go ahead.
examining their computers.
Did you execute these search warrants alone?
We have a professional team that we use to execute these search warrants.
Okay, and so a team searched.
Team of OSI agents.
And they searched all 10 of the
All 10.
houses? Okay. And what did you find in these houses?
We found that all of these people were novice computer users at best.
Okay. And so, what did you do with next?
We also noticed that all 10 people had wireless access points connected to their networks in their houses.
So these were no longer likely suspects, is that what you're saying?
It introduced the possibility that someone had used the wireless access points in these residences.
Okay, and what did you do to test this theory?
Well, we went back to try and get logs off those wireless access points.
Okay, and were you successful in finding logs and access points?
Only in 4 out of the 10 instances were we able to recover logs.
Your Honor, the government at this point would like to move into evidence Exhibits 4 through 12.
Any objection, Ms. Keneally, to 4 through 12? No objection, Your Honor. Those exhibits will be received.
Okay, so if we could display first Exhibit 4.
Contain yourself. Counsel has had the opportunity to review these documents with government counsel, and she understands whether there's an evidentiary objection or not. So, go ahead.
Agent Kornblum, if I could have you focus on Exhibit 4, could you please tell the jury what this is?
Exhibit 4 is a screenshot of the configuration system for a Linksys wireless access point. There's one thing to note of here on this screen, which is the internet IP address of the wireless access point, 62.36.18.218, is one of the IP addresses that appeared in the firewall logs of the U.S. Naval Academy as one of the computers that connected without authority to that computer.
Okay, and what else did you learn from examining this Linksys wireless access point?
This wireless access point was one of the 4 that we found that also had a DHCP log. A DHCP log records the MAC addresses of any computers that associate or connect to it.
And that's represented in Exhibit 5?
Yes.
Okay. And what can you tell by looking at this government Exhibit 5?
Exhibit 5 shows that 2 computers had connected to this wireless access point. The first, ThinkPad, represents a computer that was authorized. It was in the residence. The second, the computer did not present a client host name, and it had the MAC address of 0666503372-6C.
Okay, and very briefly, for the 2 people who may not know, what is a MAC address?
A MAC address is supposed to be a unique identifier for a network card. Each network card made is supposed to have one and only one unique MAC address.
Okay, now turning to Exhibit 6, what does this represent?
This represents the configuration screen of one of the other wireless access points. Again, you'll notice that the IP address here, 62.36.16.120, is also one of the IP addresses that appeared in the firewall log as having an authorized connection to the Naval Academy.
And if you look at Exhibit 7,
this is the DHCP log from that computer. Again, there was one authorized computer, a laptop, and then another computer which did not present a client host name but had the MAC address of 066650337266C.
Exhibits 8 and 9?
Exhibits 8 and 9 are similar in that they show the configuration system of the wireless access point, and again the DHCP log, and again there are authorized computers here, but there's one computer that did not present a client host name and had the MAC address 066650337266C.
And what do you conclude from these 3 Linksys wireless access points?
It's apparent that it is likely that a computer configured with that MAC address but did not present a client host name associated with all 3 of those wireless access points.
By the way, we've authenticated him as an expert beforehand and forgot to mention that. So if he's giving his opinions, that's why he's giving his opinions. Okay, if we can now turn to Exhibit 10, could you please tell the jury what this is?
This is from the last wireless access point that had logging. This is from the Smith residence. We were a bit lucky in this residence in that not only did they have a DHCP log, but they also had a connection log showing what traffic had been passing through the wireless access point.
Was there anything else different about this access point?
Yes, they also had a. It's like you're just kidding. They also had an access control list for MAC addresses, meaning that only certain specific MAC addresses were allowed to connect to this wireless access point.
Okay, so if we turn to Exhibit 11.
This is the DHCP log, and you'll notice here there are 2 authorized computers, Bastet and RA, and there is again that 3rd computer which does not present a client host name, but here the MAC address matches the MAC address of RA.
But I thought you said earlier that MAC addresses were unique to computers.
They're supposed to be unique to network cards. However, there is a feature of wireless network cards that allows you to set the MAC address for your card. This technique, or setting a different MAC address other than the one supplied by the manufacturer, is called MAC address spoofing.
Okay. So the fact that the 666 MAC address isn't reflected here, does that mean that computer was definitely not involved in this crime?
It means that computer may have been able to change its MAC address.
Okay. Okay, if we turn to Exhibit 12, could you please explain to the jury what this is?
Exhibit 12 is the connection log, again, from this wireless access point. You'll notice some legitimate traffic from the IP addresses 192.168.0.100 to such sites as eBay and CCBill. However, there are connections from the other IP address, 192.168.0.102, which as I mentioned before, is the computer that was using MAC address spoofing. Though that computer was connecting on port 44666 to the IP address 62.36.24.12, or the external IP address of the Naval Academy firewall. In other words, someone used this wireless access point to make unauthorized connections to the Naval Academy firewall on port 44666.
After the trial, you might want to give me the name of the people who actually live in that residence, but let's move on. What did you do next with this information?
At this point, we were trying to find some sort of commonality between all these houses. So what I did is I plotted the location of all the houses on a map.
And if you look at the exhibit in front of you, is this the map that you generated?
It is.
And does this fairly and accurately depict the United States Naval Academy and the surrounding area?
It does.
Okay, so Your Honor, we would like to move Government's Exhibit 12A into evidence.
Any objection to 12A? That'll be received.
Okay. We're just fishing for it. Okay. Agent Cornwall, could you please tell the jury what you've done with this map?
Well, at this point, what I've done is I've marked the Naval Academy using the yellow icon, and then put a red icon for each of the wireless access points, or each of the residents that we discovered making unauthorized connections to the Naval Academy firewall.
Okay, and looking at the evidence in this way, what did this suggest to you?
Well, it became obvious as soon as we plotted on the map that all of the residences in question were less than 100 feet from the Potomac River.
And what did you conclude from that?
We concluded that whoever was associating to these wireless access points may have been using the river as a mode of transportation, perhaps with a boat or other water-based conveyance.
How did you
We're
follow?
the Navy. We had subs, we got aircraft carriers.
How did you follow up with this theory?
We then went back to all the residents' houses and re-interviewed them, this time as a witness, to see if they had seen anything unusual on the river on the days of the unusual connections.
Had anyone seen anything unusual?
Yes, they had. As a matter of fact, on the afternoon of the 28th, there was one group of residents who were having a barbecue out back, and they noticed an unusual boat that passed by their house several times on the water.
And so before I have you describe the boat, this was May 28th?
May 28th, yes.
Okay. And what did they say about this unusual boat?
Well, they said the boat had a very distinctive paint. It was painted very distinctly, and it also had some interesting antennas on the top.
Your Honor, the defense and government have stipulated to Government's Exhibit 19.
All right, Exhibit 19 can be received and displayed.
Okay, keep it there, please, for a second. So this is the stipulation of, I believe, one of the witnesses that you interviewed. What else did they tell you about the boat that was unusual?
Ms. Smith also told us that the boat was unusual in that it... Where the heck are we going here? Oh, the name. The name of the boat was the Black Pearl, spelled BL4CK-P3RL.
Did they have anything else to say about the boat?
Yes, they said that the boat looked very unusual, so they decided to take a picture of it.
Okay, Your Honor, the government would like to move into evidence exhibits 13, 13A, and 13B.
All right, any objection to the photographs? No objection. All right, those will be received.
So what is exhibit 13?
This is what we're looking at right now. This is the photograph that Ms. Smith provided to me of the Black Pearl.
And what's interesting about the photo, in your expert opinion?
In my opinion, the antennas at the top of the mast are very, very interesting. You can see that highlighted in this
13B.
expansion of the image, which we've blown up.
Very well. And what did you do next with this information?
Well, I used what's called an internet search engine named Google to look up the Black Pearl.
And Your Honor, the government would like to move into evidence exhibits 14 and 15.
Any objection to those exhibits? All right, 14 and 15 will be received.
And what is exhibit 14?
Exhibit 14 was what the first result off the Google search was, and this is a blog entry by someone who goes by the name Jericho.
What did the blog entries say?
The blog entries...
Your Honor, the government is not introducing this to show the truth of the matter asserted. Rather, we're just showing identification.
All right, I'll overrule that objection, allow the witness to proceed. Go ahead.
The blog entry is entitled Walking the Plank on the Black Pearl and describes an incident where Jericho was forced to literally walk the plank and jump overboard from this vessel.
And what did you do with this information?
Well, I wrote to the contact address on the blog and then was contacted by Mr. Brian Martin.
And what did you learn from Brian Martin?
Well, Mr. Martin was very willing to put me in touch with Mr. Marvin Biggs, a.k.a. Captain Hack, and also told me where I could find the Black Pearl.
Where did he say you could find the Black Pearl?
Well, originally he said that I could find it down at the dock in Pier 51, but actually I found it now in Pier 53.
So what did that suggest to you?
It led me to believe that they were using some sort of peer-to-peer technology.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's all the jokes for this witness. What did you do with this information?
At that point, we obtained and executed a search warrant against Mr. Biggs' residence and his vessel. We seized both his computer and his pirate hat.
Okay.
Excuse me, we seized his computer, the pirate hat.
And you talked with Mr. Biggs on that date?
Yes, we did. We attempted to interview Mr. Biggs, however, he declined to answer any questions.
And do you see Mr. Biggs in this courtroom today?
Yes, I do. He's right there.
Your Honor, if the record will reflect.
Yeah, the record will reflect the identification of Mr. Briggs.
Okay. So what did you find on Mr. Biggs' computer?
We found three pertinent things to this investigation. First, there was a folder called USNA Stuff.
Your Honor, we'd like to move Government's Exhibit 16 into evidence.
Any objection to 16? 16 will be received.
And what is this exhibit?
This is a screenshot of that directory that we found on his computer. You can see there the Excel spreadsheet there, Autumn Cruise. That actually was those were copies of the Naval Academy summer cruise assignments document as it was being generated. It is also interesting to note that the cruise updates here, there was a daily backup made. You can see those files at the top, backup 0517 for May 17th, all the way up to 0527. There were no backups in this directory made after May 27th. You'll also notice that the timestamps for all these files are between 4:13 and 4:24 p.m. on May 28th of 2003.
So it is your belief that these documents were the copies of the documents from the doc server, is that correct?
Yes.
Are these documents available anywhere else in the world?
Absolutely not. These documents are for official use only and would not be released outside the Naval Academy for any reason.
And these documents aren't publicly available in any way?
No.
Okay. What else of interest did you find on the machine?
We also found an email that had been sent. If we could pull that specific email up.
And Agent Kornblum, if we could please have you quickly read this to the jury.
Certainly. The message is to Yuri Andropov, yuri@kiev.bz. BZ, of course, being the top letter domain for Bazirkistan. We found out that this individual later was a staff member of the Bazirkistani embassy. It is from Captain Jack Hack, jack@biggs.com, regarding information. The message text is our Yuri. I was referred to yea by Bluetooth of card.
All right, no, Mr. Biggs, have a seat. I'll tell you what, it speaks for itself. We don't have to read it. Everybody can have their own interpretation. Have a seat, Mr. Biggs.
Control yourself.
Mr. Biggs, have a seat, please. No. You want to fire your counsel?
Yeah, I want to fire my.
You know what, I cashed my retainer.
Mr. Biggs, you're in mid-trial. How would you intend to proceed without an attorney? You wish to represent yourself?
I'll keep her.
I think that's a wise decision. And just stay in your seat. We'll let the jury, all 200 of them, read it.
This email, which offers a sample of some work in exchange for a deal, also had an attachment. The attachment, which if we go this attachment here, this is a snippet of the attachment which has been slightly redacted to protect the privacy of the midshipmen, but this is part of the summer cruise assignments for the United States Naval Academy in the summer of 2003.
Okay, and what else did you find on the laptop?
We also found a program called NetStumbler, which is used for the discovery of wireless access points. NetStumbler contained a log of the MAC addresses of those wireless access points which it had discovered.
And was there such a log found on the laptop?
There was.
Your Honor, move into Evidence Governance Exhibit 17, please.
Any objection to 17?
No, Your Honor.
That'll be received.
This is the log that NetStumbler recorded, and the MAC addresses listed here, these 4 MAC addresses match 4 of the MAC addresses of the wireless access points from the residents whose computers made unauthorized connections to the United States Naval Academy firewall.
And did you compare these to any other evidence? Did you just say that?
Yes.
Well then, very well. Thank you. No further questions, Your
All
Honor.
right, thank you. Mr. Holmes, Ms. Keneally, you may cross-examine.
Thank you, Your Honor. Agent Kornblum, in your expert opinion, could someone with cursory knowledge and skill of wireless networking have accomplished the hack that you described earlier?
No.
And why do you say that?
Well, first, someone with cursory skill probably wouldn't think to try and hide their tracks by using other people's wireless access points. That in and of itself indicates they thought about this for quite a bit. Second of all, the MAC address spoofing is a non-trivial technique. It can be done, but it's not exactly enabled by default. Someone would have to, first of all, sniff out the MAC address of an authorized computer in the household, and only then would be able to connect wirelessly into an access-controlled WAP. And finally, setting up the rules for a Gauntlet firewall. Gauntlet is not a widely used firewall product outside the U.S. military anymore. And so whoever had knowledge of that probably was fairly experienced with what they were doing.
So, Agent Kornblum, it would be fair to say then, given the MAC address spoofing, the attempts to hide tracks, and the insertion of the firewall rules, that required someone with relatively high degree of technical capabilities.
Yes.
During the course of your investigation, how much time did you spend interviewing Mr. Brian Martin?
Spent probably 2 hours interviewing Mr. Martin.
Okay. Do you have an opinion as to the technical capabilities of Mr. Martin?
I believe Mr. Martin is a very, very technical and very capable individual.
In your expert opinion, is Mr. Martin skilled and knowledgeable about MAC address spoofing, firewalls insertion, and techniques to evade detection?
I believe he is, yes.
Okay, turning to your earlier testimony, when you say that someone, quote, poked holes in the firewall, isn't it true that someone with administrative privileges could also have configured the firewall to act in that way?
Yes.
What's your job title, Agent Kornblum?
I'm a computer crime investigator.
Okay. And isn't it true that a computer crime investigator with the Navy effectively garners an hourly wage of $2.32 per hour?
Plus tips.
Let the record reflect. And how many hours approximately did you spend investigating this case?
We spent 207 hours investigating this case.
Okay, 207 hours. So roughly at $2.32 an hour for 200 plus hours, we're talking 470, 80 some dollars.
Give or take, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so there were no other costs incurred during the course of this case?
Not during my investigation, no.
Okay. So $475 roughly approximately is what it cost the government in this case.
That's what it cost OSI.
Okay. Finally, turning to the summer cruise schedule that was found on Captain Hack's machine, isn't it true that you have no knowledge as to who placed that document there?
It could have been placed by another person, but given that it was found in his possession and he didn't offer up any, he didn't exactly loan it out to people.
Agent Corbin, isn't it true that you cannot say that Captain Hack was at the keyboard, downloaded the tools, ran the hacking tools, downloaded the information onto his computer?
That's correct.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Keneally. Any redirect examination, Mr. Holmes? All right, Agent Kornblum, you may step down. Thank you. All right, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The United States Attorney calls Oscar Simpson.
All right, Mr. Simpson, come on up and watch your step. I'll watch mine. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in the matter pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Have a seat. Please state your full name.
Oscar J. Simpson, sometimes called Homer.
Good evening, Mr. Simpson.
Jay.
Hi,
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Simpson, please tell the jury who you work for.
I work for the U.S. Naval Academy.
And what do you do for the U.S. Naval Academy?
I'm a GS-4 system administrator.
And what are your job duties as a systems administrator?
I enforce policy.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, they have a security policy, and I make sure everyone else follows it.
Okay. Very fine. Do you remember an investigation led by Agent Kornblum in June of 2003?
The man in black there?
The man in black there.
Yes.
Did you assist Agent Kornblum in that investigation?
Yes.
And what can you tell the jury about the wireless access point that Agent Kornblum has testified finding in that investigation?
Well, I put it there.
And why did you put a wireless access point?
Well, they said I needed some more vitamin D, and I thought being out in the sun on the wall by the Naval Academy, I could do stuff. So I put the access point in so that I could do that.
Was this against naval rules in any way?
No, I enforced the policy.
And how did you use the wireless access point?
Well, I put it in place, and I wanted to protect it, so I put it behind the firewall.
Okay. And what machines did you access using the wireless access point?
The log system, because I was trying to do some system administrator material, and I wanted to be able to work it from the outside.
Did you use it to access the firewall?
Yes, I guess I did.
Did you ever use it to access?
But I came from the inside out
Got it.
because of where I protected the firewall. I'm sorry, where I protected the access point.
Did you ever use it to access the document server, doc001?
No, that's against policy.
Okay.
I didn't have a need to know.
Now, Mr. Simpson, and this is important, did anyone else, in your knowledge, use your wireless access point?
Oh, no, that's against the policy.
But how can you be so sure that no one else used your wireless access point in your
Because they know
organization?
they'd be fired if I found them.
Okay. Let's turn now to the firewall in the Naval Academy. Who has the ability at the Naval Academy to administer the Gauntlet firewall tables?
Just myself.
Okay, and if we can turn to previously admitted Government Exhibit 3. If it's, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Imagine Government Exhibit 3 on the screen. The table for the firewall. What is Exhibit 3? Okay, maybe put it up there. There we go. What is this exhibit, Mr. Simpson?
Oh, this is just describing how the rule set is on the firewall, what we permit, what we don't permit.
And if we focus on the bolded area that's now highlighted on the screen, did you add this section?
No, I would never add anything with test.
Okay.
Mine would be prod.
Okay, and nobody else who works for you or for the Naval Academy has the ability to add this?
Oh, no, sir.
Okay.
They're all GS2s.
Okay. Are you familiar with the user whose user ID is Jack?
No, he's not part of the Naval Academy.
If I can refresh your recollection. Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You familiar with the user whose user ID is Jack?
No, sir.
All right, let's move. So is it fair to say no one named Jack has the ability to administer the firewall?
Exactly. It's against policy. You have to have an SID.
Now what about the doc server? Does anyone else have the ability to access files on the doc server?
Only the officers and midshipmen at the Naval Academy.
Okay. What about guests? Are
Oh,
there
that's
guest
against
accounts on the
policy.
doc
We
server?
would never allow, we disable that kind of passwords.
Okay, no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Ms. Keneally, may cross-examine.
Mr. Simpson, did you set up the security on the wireless access point at the Navy?
No, it came with default security positions. I just installed it as defaults. Manufacturer said everything was in place, so I just had to plug it in, turn it on, then I go out by the seawall.
Do you consider plugging in and installing the default firewall as adequate security?
I thought we were talking about the access point.
We're talking about the firewall right now.
Firewall doesn't have defaults. We have to fill in the rules on that, and that's covered by policy.
Okay. Getting back to the security controls, what security controls have you employed on the access point and any other machines in the wireless network?
Well, on the access point, I just used the defaults, and in order to protect the access point, I put it behind the firewall.
Okay. And are the default settings on the access point adequate to protect the sensitive documents in the Navy network?
Of course.
Okay.
And we have policy to back that up.
Are you solely responsible for security on the access points?
I most certainly am.
For security on the document servers and all the machines on the Navy network?
No, just the ones associated with the firewall and the log 001 system.
How do you enforce your security policy, Mr. Simpson?
By reviewing the logs every 2 months.
And do you maintain regular accounting of logs?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you protect logs and keep them stored off-site?
No, they're stored on my desk.
Okay.
I print them up about every week, stick them in the corner of the desk.
How do
And
you,
actually, I review them when they start to fall over.
okay. Isn't it true that you could conceivably make any changes from a security setting standpoint without anyone else overseeing those changes?
Yes,
Okay.
but the policy allows that.
Last question, Mr. Simpson. Isn't it true that you know more about the security of Fort Knox than you know about the security of wireless networks? No further questions.
Sustained. All right, thank you. Counsel, any redirect examination? Thank you. You can step down then, Mr. Simpson. Government may call us next witness.
Next is called Brian Martin.
All right, Mr. Martin, if you please come up to the witness stand. Mr. Martin, do you solemnly swear? Normally, I'm not this close to a witness, and my clerk swears the witness in. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Is that a yes? All right, have a seat. Speak right into that microphone if you would, Mr. Martin, and state
sir.
your full name.
Brian Martin,
Counsel?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Martin, how old a man are you?
I'm sorry,
How old are you?
30,
And where do you live?
currently Denver,
Okay, and where did you live before you lived in Denver?
Maryland,
Specifically where in Maryland?
Laurel,
Laurel, Maryland. Is that near Annapolis, Maryland?
yeah, about 25 minutes away, I think.
Okay. And what do you do for a living?
Consultant,
What kind of consulting?
computer security.
Okay. Were you ever a member of the crew of a boat called the Black Pearl?
I wouldn't go that far.
And what do you mean by that?
I've been on that wretched boat, but I wouldn't call myself a crewmate under Captain Asshat back here.
Hey!
Mr. Martin, just go ahead and respond. Hold on, just respond to the questions and don't add any unnecessary editorial comments. Go ahead.
But you did regularly sail on the Black Pearl for a time?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do on the Black Pearl?
Feared for my life.
Did you consider this a job? Yes.
Oh, yeah, we did some of our work from the boat just to kind of get away from the office and, relax.
What kind of job was this that you all engaged in on the Black Pearl?
We run a company that basically finds and resells data. We bundle it up and find a good person that would use it for good intentions.
How did you obtain your information?
Oh, we used a set of elaborate databases such as Google and LexisNexis.
Okay. Did any of this work involve wireless networks?
When we were on the boat or driving to and from work, yes, we would use wireless.
So you could use wireless networks from the boat?
Yes.
And how was this enabled? How were you allowed to do this?
It was a tricky setup. Captain, whoever, Biggs,
Mr. Biggs?
sorry, he was very strict about who could use the wireless on the boat. After a month of arguments, he finally allowed me to use it occasionally, but elsewise it was mainly him.
Okay, and you use the hardware on the boat? Did you use your own laptop?
I use my own laptop.
Okay. How did you find wireless access while you were on the boat?
We would use public access points that were free to use for all.
And what do you mean by public access points?
Oh, like Bob's local coffee shop would offer free wireless access with a large cup of coffee.
Would you ever use private residence wireless access points?
Not without permission, that'd be wrong.
Okay. Have you, while you're on the Black Pearl, ever used it with permission, a private residence's wireless access point?
Not a private residence, no.
Okay. How did you end your association with the Black Pearl and Captain Hack?
It was an interesting night. He kind of lost it.
When did this occur?
This was, I believe, May 2nd.
Of 2003?
Yes.
Okay.
And Biggs decided that he was the best pirate on the seas and, the best wireless hacker around. We got in an argument about company stuff and then, what some information was worth and whose EverQuest character was better. Went back and forth for an hour. He finally ended the night by pulling his sword, backing me in a corner, and making me jump off ship.
Have you ever been on the Black Pearl since then?
Definitely not.
While you were on the Black Pearl, did anyone else, aside from you and Captain Hack, use wireless connections?
No, he would throw him overboard for that.
Okay. And when did you move to Denver? You mentioned you're in Denver now?
That was December of that year.
Okay, no further questions? John?
Thank you, counsel. Ms. Keneally, you may cross-examine.
Mr. Martin, do you let other persons use your computer, access your computer?
Absolutely not.
So all the tools and documents and programs that are installed on your computer were put there by you?
On my computer, yes.
Okay. Mr. Martin, do you consider yourself skilled in computer technology and in wireless networking?
Definitely.
How confident are you in your skills?
No, very much so. Hush up, Biggs.
Hold on, gentlemen. Mr. Biggs, contain yourself. And
Yeah, besides, I've taught you everything you know, you asshat.
Hold on. We're not ready for our break time yet, so let's go.
Mr. Martin, are you familiar with wireless hacking tools?
Yes, I am.
Have you ever used wireless hacking tools?
Yes, I have, but just on the test network at our office.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. You answered my question. Mr. Martin, have you ever sniffed SSIDs?
Sure. Just in the office.
Isn't it true have you ever heard of a technology called MAC address spoofing?
Yeah, I had to teach Biggs about that too.
And isn't it true that you've actually spoofed MAC addresses to access certain networks in the
Sure,
past?
in the office.
Just for point of clarity, I think the jury's well aware, but we want to highlight this point. You do know Captain Jack Hack, correct?
Unfortunately.
Okay. And how would you characterize your relationship with Captain Hack?
We have no relationship anymore.
Okay.
You'll get used to that in prison.
Corporal Strike, sua sponte, that last statement, instruct the jury to disregard.
Is it fair to say that you have an antagonistic relationship with Captain Hack?
I think it's fair to say I hate the asshat. I'm sorry.
Based on your experiences with Captain Hack, is he technically knowledgeable in wireless networking?
Just what I taught him.
Okay. Isn't it true, though, that Captain Jack Hack is responsible for the technical juggernaut that you are today?
No, not at all. Like I said, I had to teach him everything. Installing Windows XP was kind of a rough point of his life.
So it's true, then, that any knowledge that Captain Jack Hack has regarding wireless networking or hacking is due to your tutelage?
Most of it.
Thank you. No
I
further
think you read a
questions.
few books. Security 101, Hacking Exposed, you know.
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank you, counsel. Any redirect? Just a few questions. All right.
Mr. Martin, did you ever access the U.S. Naval Academy's firewall?
Oh, definitely not. That would be wrong.
Did you ever access the United States Naval Academy file server?
No, that would be wrong too.
Did you ever steal a file from the United States Naval Academy?
That's unethical, no.
I mean, would you ever steal a file from the Naval Academy?
No, sir.
Why not?
It's wrong. I mean, that's breaking the law. It's just pushing the boundary. You can't do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any recross? All right, thank you. Step down. Any additional witnesses or evidence at this time, Mr. Holm?
The prosecution rests.
Government rests, all right. Counsel will dispense, go ahead and have a seat there. You can be excused. We'll dispense with Rule 29 motions at this point. Those have been made and denied. Is the defense going to present evidence at this time? Yes, we are. You may proceed to call your first witness.
Your Honor, the defense would like to call Jonathan Klein to the stand.
All right, Mr. Klein, if you please step up to the witness stand and solemnly swear as well.
Yes, sir.
All right, have a seat.
What am I swearing to, sir?
We'll just expedite it so we can get to your break here, but you may proceed. Just state your name for the record.
Jonathan Ian Klein.
Thank you.
Mr. Klein, what's your occupation?
I'm a senior security specialist at Kalen's.
Okay. And what does your position entail?
I'm responsible for writing security policies, implementing security solutions, including wireless solutions.
Do you perform forensic examinations of machines?
Yes, I do.
Are you involved in incident response?
Yes, I do. I create policies and help clients deal with incidents that do occur in the workplace.
So you work
Pull that
at,
microphone just a little bit closer to you so that folks in the back can hear you. All right.
so do you work at a technical and policy level?
Yes, I do.
And can you just describe your involvement in the case at hand?
Yes, I can. I did a forensics examination of Captain Hack's laptop, Brian Martin's laptop, and the compromised servers at the United States Naval Academy.
And during the course of your involvement in those activities that you performed, specifically on Mr. Martin's machine, what were you able to find during the course of your forensic examination?
During my examination, I discovered that Mr. Martin had a dual-booted laptop running both Windows XP and SUSE Linux.
And aside from the standard operating system software and programs, what other software or tools did you find on Mr. Martin's Windows partition?
On his Windows XP partition, I found NetStumbler and Ethereal.
Okay. And can you please briefly describe those tools?
Yes. NetStumbler is a package that allows you to identify wireless networks and allow you then to gain the MAC addresses so that you can connect to those wireless networks. Ethereal is a packet sniffer that allows you to look at traffic passing along wireless networks and being able to obtain information.
And those tasks, are those tasks possible without having some specific tool like those that you mentioned?
No, they're not.
Were you able to determine if those tools were actively run on Mr. Martin's system?
Yes, I looked and found that he had a NetStumbler file. I believe it's Defense Exhibit number 3. And the NetStumbler file was identical to the information found on Mr. Biggs's laptop, identified by Agent Kornblum in one of the government exhibits.
Your Honor, at this time I'd like to move to admit Defense Exhibit number 3 into evidence.
Any objection to 3? All right, Exhibit 3 will be received.
So after you completed the examination of the Windows partition, did you examine the Linux partition in Mr. Martin's machine?
Yes, I did.
And apart from the standard software and operating system files, what other software tools did you find on the Linux partition in Mr. Martin's machine?
On Mr. Martin's machine, I found copies of Kismet, Air Snort, Monkey Jack, and Ethereal.
Could you please describe those tools?
Yes, I can. Kismet is a tool that's similar to NetStumbler, except it has other features. You can capture packets. It has some intrusion detection capabilities. You could use it to crack web keys. Air Snort will allow you to passively monitor 802.11b LANs and be able to capture enough packets to be able to crack web keys. Monkey Jack was proof of concept code that was delivered here at Black Hat 2002, in which they describe a man-in-the-middle attack where an intruder can disassociate a user from an access point, get in the middle, get the user to reconnect to them, and they reconnect to the wireless access point.
And were you able to determine if these tools were actively run on Mr. Martin's computer?
There was some information that, yes, these tools were run.
And what information was that?
If you look at I believe it's Defense Exhibit 1.
At this point, Your Honor, I'd like to offer Defense Exhibit number 1 into evidence.
Any objection to 1? All right, that will be received.
I found in one instance where there was a file that contained this output where apparently Mr. Martin had run Monkey Jack.
And so based on your examination of Mr. Martin's machine, both the Linux and Windows partitions, what conclusions were you able to draw?
It was my opinion that these tools went far beyond the casual wireless user, that whoever was using these tools and installed these tools was really serious about their wireless networking and really knew what they were doing.
Turning to the laptop owned by Captain Hack, which you had a chance to forensically examine, were you able to perform a full forensic exam?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And during the course of that examination, were you able to determine the MAC address associated with Captain Hack's laptop?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did that MAC address match any of the MAC addresses found in the logs on the wireless access points?
No, they did not.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. No further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Keneally. Any cross-examination, Mr. Holmes?
Evening, Mr. Klein.
Good day, Mr. Ohm.
You didn't find the summer cruise assignment document on Mr. Martin's machine, did you?
No, I did not.
In fact, you didn't find any machines from the Naval Academy on Mr. Martin's machine, did you?
No, I didn't.
In fact, aside from the NetStumbler saved file that you discussed, did you find anything on Mr. Martin's machine that tied him to the intrusion we're discussing today?
No, there was no other information.
Okay. Let's turn to the defendant's laptop. How many operating systems did the defendant have installed on his laptop?
Captain Hack's laptop was dual booted with Windows XP and SUSE Linux.
Okay, you've talked some, I believe, about the Windows partition. Did you analyze the Linux partition as well?
Yes, I did.
Isn't it true that you found a program called Ethereal installed on that partition?
Yes, I did.
And could you please tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what is Ethereal?
Well, it said Ethereal is a packet sniffer, and it will allow you to view packets passing across wireless LAN. You could look at it to view MAC addresses, other information.
Okay. Your Honor, the government would like to move into evidence, Government's Exhibit 20.
Any objection to 20? That'll be received.
Mr. Klein, could you please take a look at this exhibit? And tell the jury what this is.
This is a small shell script that allows a user to enter a MAC address and then reconfigures the Ethernet interface to that MAC address. And as you can see, it only has one argument.
Is it fair to characterize this as a script that allows you to spoof a MAC address?
Yes, it can.
And did you find any similar script like this on Brian Martin's computer?
No, but that doesn't necessarily
Just please answer yes or no to the question.
No, I did not.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Any direct examination, Ms. Keneally?
Yes,
Something interesting.
Mr. Klein, once again, did you find, during the course of your examination, were you able to determine the MAC address associated with Mr. Captain Hack's laptop?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and did that MAC address match any of the MAC addresses found in the logs on the wireless access point?
No, they did not.
Okay. And with regard to the script that we see in front of us right here, is there anything in that script that would lead you to believe, that would point you to the MAC address found on the wireless access points?
No, that's just
That would,
script.
I'm sorry, let me be clear, that would
Sorry.
connect Captain Hack's laptop to the wireless access points?
No, it's merely a script to allow you to set the MAC address.
Okay. No further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Ullman, any recross? Thank you. Mr. Klein, you may step down then. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I think we're going to go ahead and take a short break of 10 minutes. Please keep it to 10 minutes because we want to be able to stick to the schedule, and I think there probably are refreshments outside. So we'll reconvene at 10 minutes after the hour. You say, should we go ahead and proceed? Yeah, we're going to have to. Okay. Out of respect to everybody's schedule here, we'll go ahead and proceed with the next witness. And see, oh, all right. Well, see, here we are. Well, here's our next witness. You see. Well, you know, it was, as a matter of fact. I think wanted to get my photo with you. I was running for office in Las Vegas, that would get me votes, but I'm appointed for life, it could only get me impeached. All right, Ms. Keneally, may call your next witness.
Your Honor, the defense would like to call Dr. Richard Hannibal Thiem to the stand.
Mr. Thiem, please step up and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in the matter pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Please have a seat and state your full name for the record.
I'm Dr. Richard Hannibal Thiem, apparently.
Dr. Thiem, what is your occupation?
I am a psychiatrist. I've been in private practice for 32 years.
And can you just explain how you're involved in this case, please?
Yes. Captain Jack, I believe it was suggested that he see me to deal with some of the tensions and stresses of the situation. And so we engaged in a long period of psychotherapy, during which I became, well, really very fond of Captain Jack. Because a great deal of energy and information passes in both directions, and I think I was probably as influenced by his strong personality and character and understanding of things as I was able to contribute towards some increasing stability for this gentleman.
And were you able to make or render any opinion on Captain Hack's mental state?
Well, initially, my diagnosis, you have to be very careful in psychiatry not to categorize too quickly and not to simply impose a label. My initial impression was that this was someone who was extremely paranoid, borderline paranoid schizophrenia perhaps, I wasn't sure, but certainly paranoid and certainly delusional, because he was under the impression that he was not acting like a pirate, but that he was in fact a pirate. Over the course of treatment, I became convinced that he was, in fact, a pirate. And I came to understand his perspective in relationship to networks, computing, and hacking quite deeply. And to some degree, as he informed me how it's structured and how its parameters are built, I came to believe that his understanding was mostly correct. He may be delusional and a paranoid schizophrenic, but nevertheless, he's a very smart, capable paranoid schizophrenic.
So is it fair to say, Dr. Thiem, that you drank the Kool-Aid?
Captain Jack and I discussed that very term during our fourth session. I think, Jack, that neither of us felt we were drinking the Kool-Aid so much as really coming to know one another deeply and intimately. Someone else might say yes, but we did make Kool-Aid once, yes, and I'm not going to go there, Captain Jack.
Dr. Thiem, is
Maybe
it...
you'd like to direct the witness's attention to the elements of paranoid schizophrenia under DSM-4. Would that,
Sure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, Dr. Thiem, is it your opinion that the defendant, Captain Hack, possessed the mental faculty to form the intent needed to commit the criminal act in this case?
Many of our sessions focused on understanding the intentionality of the hacker properly understood, and it has come to be my understanding that you cannot have an intention or an intent to do something which can't happen or can't be done. The hacker understands that a network like this wireless network has no walls. It's a gateless, unbounded space. It is a totally free space in which information, beginning with the building of networks like this by the Navy and the other elements of the military, industrial, educational, entertainment, media complex, was originally intended to be a gateless and open space. You can't have both security, which means separation, and also access and freedom of flow. And it was meant to be a place where the flow was free. Therefore, a hacker was someone who simply understood this, that there were no walls or barriers or fences or gates. There was just opportunity to roam free on the high seas, as it were, of the internet. And therefore, there could not be an intent to violate a boundary or barrier or cross a fence, because there were no such things. There was merely the exchange of information and energy in this completely finite but unbounded space.
So then it is your opinion that he did not possess the intent
That's correct.
necessary?
There was no intent to violate anything which was in fact inviolable, because it was whole in and of itself, as an ontological entity.
Okay, Dr. Thiem. I'd love to engage you offline on this, but I've got a glass of wine waiting for me over there, so no further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you may cross-examine, Mr. Owen.
Yeah, I suppose I'd like to. If I follow what you said, Dr. Thiem, I didn't follow what you said.
It's not uncommon.
You talked a little bit about the hacker ethic in this borderless environment. Is it part of this hacker ethic to steal documents?
Steal means taking something that doesn't belong to you, and if everything belongs to everyone else in the space and we share, then there really is no theft.
All right, let me rephrase that then. Would it be consistent to break into a government system, take documents that have to do with ship deployment, and try and sell it to a foreign power?
When you say it like that, I would say it would be inconsistent with the hacker ethos as Captain Jack helped me to understand it.
Okay, as much as I'd like to keep you on, I've got it in on that. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Any redirect?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right. Any other witnesses on behalf of the defense, Ms. Keneally?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Captain Jack Hack to the stand, please.
All right. Also known as Mr. Biggs. Mr. Biggs, please step up to the witness stand. Mr. Biggs, do you, look me in the eye. No,
I get the good eye.
that's it, the good eye.
I get the good eye, yeah.
All right, not the evil eye.
Yeah, the other good one, yeah.
All right, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Sure.
I'll tell you the origins of that. It's really quite fascinating.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, you may.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please state your name for the record.
Captain Jack Hack.
Is that your birth name?
Well, in a matter of speaking, yes. I felt I was reborn during a sea incident involving when my first ship collapsed, and so in that instance, yes, I go by Captain Jack Hack.
And is your legal name Captain Jack Hack?
Legally, actually, as of, it should be in about 2 weeks. When I get the ID cards that I've ordered, it will be my legal name.
Currently, it's Marvin Biggs.
Yes, I do use that old worn-out moniker on occasion.
And what's your occupation, Captain Hack?
I am an information broker.
And what is an information broker?
Well, it's someone who brokerage. I sell information. I sell information to other people that I've gathered.
Captain Hack, did you intrude on the Navy computer network?
Absolutely not. I would never, ever do such a thing.
Captain Hack, did you access the Navy network and steal documents?
No, of course not. That would be wrong, to quote someone who made up a big funny story earlier.
Captain Hack, what does it mean to you to intrude?
Well, what was the question? I'm sorry.
What does it mean to you to quote-unquote intrude?
Now, are we talking about wenching, or are we talking about computers? Just so I know. I want to...
We're talking about wireless networking and computers.
Oh, okay. Well, basically what you do is, intrusion means, committing crimes and breaking in. However, if you're just accessing something that's there and it's free and it's available and doesn't have an annoying banner telling you to go away, then it's, that's okay.
And in the course of your wireless networking activities, did you happen upon circumstances where you ran into banners or barriers that would lead you to believe that you were intruding on a network?
Well, basically for wireless, we can, my crew and I, we really consider that if you see WEP, where they're encrypting the traffic, we consider that a form of a banner. Someone's trying to possibly keep somebody out. But other than that, if there's no WEP, then it's like, they're basically asking for you to connect. In fact, when you're running the computer, it sometimes just automatically connects up to those networks.
So it's fair to say, did you find anything that would give you reason to believe that you were accessing anything other than publicly available wireless networks?
I'm going to say yes to that because I was thinking about something else, but yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right.
Okay, that you accessed something other than a publicly available network?
No, actually, I didn't do that. I didn't access anything other than publicly.
Punch down over there.
See, you're being a little bit too verbose for us simple pirate folks. So
Okay, let me rephrase that. I apologize. Did you find anything in the course of your wireless networking activities that would give you reason to believe that you were accessing anything other than publicly available wireless networks?
No.
Okay. Are you aware of anyone ever using your wireless computing resources on your ship?
Yes, I am aware of a certain individual doing that, yes.
Can you please elaborate on that?
Well, it seems that a Mr. Brian Martin, who was a kind of an apprentice crewman, as it were. Yes, cabin boy. Cabin boy Brian, who came on board. He wanted to show us certain skills and stuff, and after a lot of, really unsightly begging and pleading, we let him have access to some of the wireless equipment. And he would basically waste our precious bandwidth on occasion.
Was Brian Martin knowledgeable about computer technology and wireless networking?
Well, now he wasn't, say, as good as someone such as myself. He brought a little bit to the table. That's why we brought him on. He said he could do a lot. He taught us a few things. I guess we just hadn't read that particular book or whatever. And, so he did give us, a little bit of knowledge, but for the most part, no. We were, just incredibly skilled pirates. And this is what we do for a living.
But
Okay?
Brian,
Oh, sorry, were you going to ask something?
I'm sorry, I was going to say, did Brian Martin impart knowledge about wireless networking to you?
Yes, he's on numerous occasions tried to profess his expertise in various areas. Now, whether it actually was expertise is, that's a subject to interpretation. You know what I'm saying?
How would you characterize your relationship with Brian Martin?
Well, now it's rather poor, being that he just testified against me.
Do you have any reason to believe that Mr. Martin would want to cause you harm?
Oh, yes. Yes, there was the incident.
Please explain.
Well, we have strict rules, for sailing on the high seas, and there were 4 distinct reasons that managed to get Jericho, Mr. Brian Martin, out there walking the plank. The first one is, of course, we are a business, and he wasn't bringing in the booty. Okay? He wasn't.
Can you please define for the jury what booty is?
Pieces of 8, gold. The goods. He wasn't bringing in his fair share. Not at all. That was reason number 1. Reason number 2 is because of the bandwidth problem. If he wasn't doing EverQuest, it was pornography. I know you're probably shocked by that, but it was, and it wasn't like good, clean pirate pornography. It was goats and sheep. You don't really want to know. Okay, just saying.
Okay, and the third reason.
Oh, the third reason, specifically, he insisted that he was able to, and I think everyone will agree with me here, that he thought for some reason that he was capable of wenching better than any of us.
And wenching, please describe that.
Oh, that's the acquisition of, females for private pleasure, of course. And he said that he was, the best wencher of all, or some lame thing. Look at the man, okay? We have female pirate crew members capable of getting more wenches than this sad individual.
And the fourth reason.
Probably the most important of all. Just 2 words. Erectile dysfunction.
So, Captain Heck, it's fair to say that, in your opinion, Brian Martin harbored a grudge against you.
Oh, certainly, yes. Yeah, he didn't want to walk the plank at all.
And is it fair to say that Brian Martin had wireless networking capabilities?
Yeah, he had capabilities. Like I said, go porn, whatever it took.
No further questions.
Thank you, counsel. You may cross-examine, Mr. Hook.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Biggs. Good evening, Mr. Biggs. Mr. Biggs. All right, I'm going to...
Captain Jack Hack.
Yes.
Okay.
Very well. Now, Mr. Biggs, nobody else can touch the keyboard on your ship except you, isn't that right?
No one else is supposed to be touching the keyboard on my computer. That is correct.
When Mr. Martin was on your ship, was he allowed to use his own laptop on your ship?
We did allow it, like I said before, we did allow it on occasion, and of course it was a dreadful mistake.
Okay. And you have conceded that you've accessed the internet using what you call public unsecured wireless access points from your ship, isn't that true?
Well, of course, yes. That's what they're there for.
To your knowledge, were any of those publicly accessible wireless access points in private residences nearby the river?
Well, okay. There's a couple of things with that. All right? Okay, for one, if they would put some type of banner that said, "I am a private home, don't use my wireless access point," then of course we would never access one in that case. Number 2, it's very, very hard to tell the difference between, say, a cyber cafe and a home residence. A lot of times they use the exact same equipment. And number 3, oftentimes there might be an individual at one household that's accessing the internet through another household's wireless access point, one of their neighbors. So, it's all just kind of one big community of loving free access of the internet, and who am I to come in and say, I really shouldn't be doing this, because I'm just a part of the I'm really a part of the system. In many ways, kind of a victim too, really. Was that good?
But if you could answer yes or no, to your knowledge, have you accessed the network through a wireless access point in a private residence?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay. Are you skilled with the computer? Do you consider yourself to be a skilled computer user?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Are there any better?
I don't think so. I've never really checked, but I don't think so. Did I mention that I was captain? Okay, did I mention that? Okay.
Isn't it true that you know how to use the program Ethereal?
Yes, I know how to use the program.
And you
Ethereal.
have used Ethereal in the past, haven't you? Your Honor, we're not admitting this for propensity, we're just admitting this to show that he has knowledge.
Yeah, I'll overrule that objection, allow the witness to testify.
Okay, what do I do?
And so you've used...
You can answer.
Oh, okay, all right.
And you've used Ethereal before.
Yeah, I've used Ethereal before.
Have you used Ethereal to sniff SSIDs?
Yeah, you could say that I have.
And have you used Ethereal to sniff MAC addresses?
Yes, because if you're using it to sniff, you're going to get everything.
Have you taken the information you've gotten from these sniffed MAC addresses and spoofed a MAC address on your computer to access the network?
Well, now, you're going to have to explain to me exactly what you think you mean by spoofing.
Have you ever
Okay.
used a command which changed the MAC address that your computer presented to the wireless access point to allow you to access that network?
I'm really not sure on that one, okay? And I'm not saying that as an insult to you, my fine working for the man friend. What I'm saying is that, essentially, a lot of times we would just change it for vanity purposes, okay?
Okay.
And so, just so to kind of say, we were here, and we were a part of this,
Okay.
so.
Thank you very much. No further questions, Your
Thank
Honor.
you. Any redirect examination?
Can I declare him a hostile witness?
No, I don't think so. All right, thank you. You can step down then.
Oh, thank you.
All right, does the defense have any additional, witnesses or evidence to present?
No further.
All right. Defense rests. Any rebuttal evidence? All right, thank you. The parties having rested their evidentiary presentation, ladies and gentlemen, at this point, we're going to hear the closing arguments of the attorneys. Again, just as with opening statements, what the attorneys say to you in closing argument is not evidence, but it is designed to be helpful to you in understanding what the evidence presented has or has failed to establish. So I'd ask that you give your careful attention to counsel. We'll begin with Mr. Ohm with his opening summation on behalf of the government. Okay, would you prefer me to instruct before argument then, or do you want to do that?
Yeah, maybe.
Typically I do.
Yeah, let's
so-
do that, sure. And I think we're not having.
Not going to have any rebuttal argument? Okay. Counsel, we're just bringing me up to speed. Typically, what would happen at this stage of the proceedings, if you were a jury, for example, the judge would, before closing argument, or sometimes after closing argument, it depends on the judge's propensities, would instruct the jury as to the law that applies in the case, and then you would hear the closing arguments of the attorneys. Now, I'm not going to go through a detailed set of all of the types of jury instructions that I would give you, but I would remind you that your verdict would have to be based solely on the evidence presented during the course of the trial. I would also remind you that the government, the prosecution, bears the burden of proving the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. I would also instruct you that the defendant, having testified, now would be treated the same as any other witness who testified, and you, the jury, would decide credibility of witnesses. You would decide which witnesses you believe, which witnesses you disbelieve during the course of the trial, and you would assign such weight as you deem appropriate to any evidence that's been presented. I would then direct your attention to the specific crimes charged in the indictment. And the indictment is the charging document that was referred to at the beginning of the case. It consists of 3 separate crimes charged called counts of the indictment. And I did, before I came out today, pull off of a handy manual that judges have that address jury instructions. But the attorneys would have had a chance to talk about these and make sure that everybody was in agreement, or at least stated their objections to the format. Essentially, I would remind the jury at that point, and I'd give them copies of these instructions, that the defendant is charged in count 1 of the indictment with transmitting a harmful program code command information to a computer system intended to cause damage in violation of Title 18 U.S. Code Section 1030 and subsections thereof. And what that would mean would be that in order for the defendant to be found guilty, the government would have to prove each of the following elements beyond a reasonable doubt. First, that the defendant, Mr. Biggs, knowingly caused Pro on closing statements? Well, I don't know about any of that, but that the defendant knowingly caused of course, I'd have all of that removed. The defendant knowingly caused the transmission of a program or code, command, or information to a computer without authorization. Second, that as a result of the transmission, the defendant intentionally impaired the integrity, availability of data, a program, a system, or information. And third, that the impairment of the data, program, system, or information resulted in losses to one or more individuals totaling at least $5,000 in value at any time during a one-year period. Fourth, that the computer damaged was used exclusively by either in this case, by the United States government, but the defendant's transmission affected the computer's use by the United States government. As to the second count of the indictment, that charge being obtaining information from a computer used by a department of the United States, I would instruct you that the government would have to prove two essential elements beyond a reasonable doubt. First, the defendant, Mr. Biggs, intentionally accessed without authorization or exceeded authorized access to a computer. And second, that by accessing without authorization a computer, the defendant obtained information from a department or agency of the United States. Finally, as to count three, the charge obtaining information from a protected computer, I would instruct you that the government would have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the following three elements. First, the defendant intentionally accessed without authorization or exceeded authorized access of a computer. Second, the defendant's access of that computer involved an interstate or foreign communication. And third, that by accessing without authorization the computer, the defendant obtained information from a computer exclusively for use of the United States government, and the defendant's conduct affected the computer's use by the United States government. Those would be the essential elements. I would also instruct you that when you retire, you'd go to the jury room, you'd have copies of all of the exhibits that have been received, and you would elect a foreperson, then you'd begin to deliberate on your verdicts. Your verdicts would have to be unanimous. All, in a criminal case, 12 persons would have to unanimously agree on that verdict of guilty or not guilty. If you could not do so, we would have a hung jury. Those little citations to elements are probably my opportunity to get even with you for some of the terms you've thrown at me. And in honesty, they're very clumsy the way they are stated from the manual. In reality, I would work with the attorneys and try and put them in more lay language, in more understandable phrases and terms, for the very reason that I would hope those of you who were testifying in a real trial would do, so that the jurors would not be sitting there asking themselves what's a qubit at every turn, when some of the terms that are used that are technical terms would just not be understood. But those would be the instructions, and they would inform, at least in part, the arguments of counsel. And with that, we'll proceed to Mr. Ohm with his summation, and then Ms. Keneally.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court, counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. During opening statement, I asked you to think about this case as a case about theft and destruction. Theft of highly sensitive information and destruction of information on the firewall. I want you to think about that in mind as you deliberate, but I want you to think about an added complexion to this case. Think about the victims. Too often we hear about computer crime being a victimless crime. That's just not the case here. We have men and women on naval vessels who are potentially put in harm's way. The government concedes completely that we introduced no evidence that any of this was used to cause harm to any soldiers. We don't know if there were even plots to use this. But what we do know is that potentiality was there. That this information, if it fell into the wrong hands, could have been used to orchestrate some sort of attack. We also know that the defendant tried to use this information for profit. We found, Agent Kornblum told you about how he found an email message on the laptop sent to an official in Berserkistan that solicited money in return for this information. It's not a victimless crime, ladies and gentlemen. There are other people whose lives, although it may not be exactly accurate to call them victims, whose lives were upended directly because of the actions of the defendant. For example, Agent Kornblum talked about the 10 people who lived along the Potomac River, probably not the smartest computer users in the world, possibly shouldn't have had such wide open access through their networks into the internet. But remember what they were subjected to as a result of that. And I concede completely that it was at the hands of the United States government. But because of these actions, because of the crime we were investigating, their homes were searched. Had we had the witness, we would have demonstrated their lives were upended. Keep these people in mind as you deliberate, ladies and gentlemen. Crimes are often talked about in terms of means, motive, and opportunity, and the United States believes that we have shown each of these three things in ample supply in this case. So let's talk about them one by one. Did the defendant have the means to commit the crime of which we have accused him? Absolutely. You've seen testimony to that fact. You saw Brian Martin on the stand. And what did Brian Martin say about this question? He said, maybe not the world's greatest wireless wizard in the world, but absolutely skilled. He had the ability to do exactly what we talked about here. But more to the point, remember what the defendant said about this when pressed on the stand. I believe his quote was, he couldn't think of anyone else in the world who was as skilled as he. Whether or not that's true isn't the important point. The important point is that he had the means, he had the ability, and there was no witness to refute that point. He had the ability to do what happened here. So turning to the second element, opportunity. What I'd like you to do when you get back to that jury room and study the instructions that His Honor has read to you is take a look in the record at the date May 28th, 2004. Agent Kornblum talked about this. Samantha Smith talked about this. This was the day that the people in Samantha Smith's home had a barbecue. Had a barbecue outside, May 28th, and saw an unusual boat making their way up the river. And as you now know through other testimony, that boat was none other than the Black Pearl. What else happened on May 28th? Well, if you study the evidence, and I implore you to do so, you will see that is the very day that the firewall logs show someone coming in through the SSH connection and accessing the dock server. It's the very day that the dock server was expropriated and information was taken from that. And how do we know that? Remember, we know that because we found those files with those date stamps on the defendant's computer. We don't have a videotape. We don't have the defendant at the keyboard typing in these commands. Believe me, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if we had such a thing, we would have shown it to you. But we have the next best thing. The defendant's attorney may talk to you about circumstantial evidence, and it's true that this case has a lot of circumstantial evidence. I would say a mountain of circumstantial evidence. A story that's often told is if you go to sleep at night and there's no snow on the ground, and you wake up the next morning and there's snow covering the ground, there's circumstantial evidence that it snowed. You may not have actually seen the snow falling, but you can say beyond a reasonable doubt that indeed it had. So let's talk about this mountain of circumstantial evidence. What does defense's counsel try to do when faced with a mountain of evidence? They try and find a molehill. And that's what they've done. They've found a convenient molehill, haven't they, in this case? They've pointed to Brian Martin. They've asked questions of many witnesses, which suggest that maybe Brian Martin had something to do with this. But think about that. Assess it critically. Brian Martin didn't have the motive to break into the Naval Academy. Brian Martin was not on the ship on the day in question. In fact, he wasn't on the ship during any of the intrusions that were talked about. Brian Martin said that this was wrong, said it crossed the line. I leave it to you, members of the jury, to assess the credibility. You looked him in the eye. You could see whether or not you could believe what he was saying, but he said that this crossed the line, that perhaps the hacker ethic that was talked about so much didn't go this far. And let's talk a little bit more about that hacker ethic because the good doctor focused on it quite a bit in his testimony. Brian Martin said you don't steal information. Maybe you break into networks, maybe you use their wireless accounts, but you don't steal information. Dr. Thiem, who in so many eloquent words elucidated this theory, even he said that there comes a point when you're breaking into a military server, stealing information, and trying to sell it to a foreign power, that you've violated this hacker ethic. So if the defense's attorney talks to you about how there was no intent here because of that, keep that in mind. So finally, we've talked about means, we've talked about opportunity, and lastly, we have to talk about motive. Was there any motive in this case? I want you to go back to that jury room and study that email message. That email message that was signed from Captain Jack Hack. I want you to read it carefully. I want you to picture what he was thinking when that email message was created. I want you to think about the money that he was asking for, and think about the consequences of what he was willing to sell for that money. And then ask yourself, was motive shown here? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I believe, the government believes we have demonstrated convincing, credible, consistent witnesses that this defendant, Marvin Biggs, broke into the Naval Academy, stole information, damaged the firewall gauntlet configuration files. And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you should go back to that jury room and please render the only verdict that the evidence supports, and that's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ohm. Ms. Keneally?
May it please the court. Counsel, it was a valiant effort. Thank you for your time and attention. Recall the Gilligan's Island theme that I initiated my opening statements with, drawing the analogy between the fictional late 60s sitcom and the case that the prosecution raises today. And what I ask in response to that is, do not syndicate this fiction. The testimony and the evidence presented to you today has proven these charges fictional, and this is why. First off, we have Agent Kornblum, a skilled and experienced forensic examiner and investigator who single-handedly took on the case and the evidence. He gave an expert opinion on the skill necessary to carry out this hack, this intrusion. He opined that Brian Martin possessed the skill and knowledge and capability to enact this hack, this intrusion, this unauthorized access, and this obtaining of information. He also opined that there were and presented evidence that the damage incurred amounted to less than the $5,000 required by these charges. And he further and most importantly opined that he cannot place the defendant, Captain Hack, at the keyboard as being responsible for the running of the tools, the hacker tools, and the downloading of the information that was found on his computer. Next, we go to Oscar Simpson, the sysadmin at the Navy who was solely responsible for the security for the naval networks. And through his testimony, we were able to determine that the security controls on the Navy networks were woefully inadequate, thus opening up the network to any number of persons who might have accessed the network and downloaded that information. Furthermore, he testified that the lack of the policy enforcement, i.e. he was the guardian of the keys and no one was overseeing him, further enabled access from anyone else outside of the Navy. Next, we move to Brian Martin, the disenchanted ex-crewman and former associate of Captain Jack Hack, who boasted of his wireless technical capabilities and who actually boasted of his teaching Captain Hack to run various tools and taught him his knowledge of wireless networking. He clearly expressed disdain for being terminated from his position and for having to embarrassingly walk the plank. He clearly had the motive. He clearly had the motive to make Captain Hack pay for the embarrassment that he put him through. Next, we move to Jonathan Klein, our forensics expert, who was able to look at all the evidence at hand. Mr. Klein was able to uncover the wireless hacking tools that were needed to hack the network and obtain the information, and he obtained them, and he was able to discover them all on Brian Martin's computer. Furthermore, he was able to find the file on Brian Martin's computer that had the same web MAC addresses that existed on Captain Hack's computer. And finally, and probably most importantly, he was able to opine that the MAC address that was assigned to Captain Hack's machine did not match the MAC address in the logs on the wireless access points. We move to Dr. Hannibal Thiem. Dr. Thiem was able to opine that the defendant did not possess the mental capability or faculty to form the intent needed to charge this crime and violate the law. And finally, we heard from Captain Hack himself, who so valiantly took the stand. And stated before you all and bared his soul that it violated his hacker ethic to intrude on another network and steal information. And for these reasons, we are confident that you will find that the government did not meet its burden in proving beyond a reasonable doubt the elements that the judge explained to you earlier. So finally, we ask that you not syndicate this fictional Gilligan's Island. And we ask that you find the defendant not guilty. If the MAC doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Thank you, counsel. I think our director has some instruction now as we have to vacate the...
Okay, we have to get out of this room in a minute or we're going to turn into pumpkins. We've arranged a banner out there where we're all going to hang out, and any questions you've got, find us out there. Otherwise, the union's going to come and kill us. So we don't want to end this, and in fact, Jennifer Granick, who contributed to this, is going to be out there. Oh, okay. Who thinks that Captain Hack is guilty? Okay, who says not guilty?
It's a hung jury. It's a hung jury. It's a hung jury.
It's a hung jury, but not very well.
Thank you for coming.
No, please don't run away. We're going to be out there, and...